paint over a mural of Mickey Mouse at a reception centre for children asylum seekers. I began though by asking him about a similar...
Right. Now, if anybody, some twat, were looking through my my bits and bobs, long ago, I've had my bath, rinse in the river, it's like 9 months ago, 8 months ago, I made an audio that was about purpose. Living homeless in a van, I've never been happier. But here's the point. The point is this. Now, I've only had one accident for weeks, and that's not the point. I got some notes. I put that in there, and it dribbled water on some pieces of paper. No crisis whatsoever. Here's the point. There is a terrible thing in Britain, and I'm assuming it comes from years of bad television. You turn the BBC on. I mean, what do we have this morning? We have reporting from Tunisia on migrants. Unfortunately, poor migrants, if they get to this land, well, we'll come to that in a moment. But, yeah, so I was sat by the creek yesterday. Somebody comes past, and I got a recording of it. It's like a middle-aged woman comes past. I was sitting reading a book. And actually makes a comment. Oh, you're reading a book. Now, here's the point. This is, you see, to the people of today, this will sound pretentious. 75 years ago, people would read. Nothing wrong with me, I'm just... Right, there we go. Clearing oneself in the morning. Ordinary working class people would read. And did read, for example, Ragged Trousered Philanthropist. 650 pages, something like that. Magnificent fun book about the reality of the cant and vanity in society. But here's the point. The point is this, is that for no particular reason, in my 20s, I started to read real books, not to be pretentious. Books like your George Eliot, the best of all, Thomas Hardy, and then The Russians. And if you read often enough, you don't have to carry on reading, but if you've had a period in your life of reading, you learn stoicism. And you are at peace inside. Now, that sounds pretentious, but let's get to the point. The point is, I mean, nowadays we have, I mean, this isn't like prepared. This, actually, she does do some quite good poetry. But we have a poem here. Moments of being. What a plunge. Water, the most feminine of elements. Its silky embrace, icy heart. As soon as I read that, I was like, feminine? What the fuck does that mean? And the whole of the sort of homespun, slightly off-grid movement has become perverted by such crap as that. I have no idea what feminine means. And that sounds contentious to the sisterhood. Excuse me, I knew women 25 years ago who lived slightly off-gridish, growing their own vegetables, etc., who would say exactly the same. But something's happened. Anyway, to me, no, not to me, I know it starts with reading. I mean, even on the BBC, Radio 4, you will hear nowadays, and I'm sorry to say they will be probably fat younger people going on about, oh, binge watching, binge watch this. What does that actually mean? That means sitting on your arse and watching television for 5 hours. Occasionally, I binge watched Succession on Vumo.to. It's great. It's magnificent writing. But here's the point. The point is this, that reading good books over a period of time, long period of time, and during periods when your life isn't going too well, you develop a kind of balance inside. And that's all that matters. Now, my circumstances, which for the last 2 years have never been happier. People would assume something. All I care about is that my kid sees that, hey, Dad plodded on happily. You don't know when shit's gonna happen. Now, 10 years ago, with somebody, I moved to the most gorgeous, overgrown, old, 300-year-old properties dotted around in an old estate ever. It was paradise. However, it may be, and that's the important thing, I'm an expert of science. It may be the property that I stayed in was so badly converted. It was so damp within. And I had one little room where I had a wood burner, and it was absolutely fine. I didn't mind it in the slightest. But over 2 or 3 years, it may be that the mould, which was apparent on the wall, there was some of the walls. I didn't actually, just ended up not using several of the rooms because I just kept one room really warm. Warm enough. But the walls of the other rooms would have a kind of a patina of mould. It's like no big deal. It may be after 3 years of that got into my system. You don't know. And today there are 5 million people living in, you can call them 10 million people even. You can call them substandard conditions. You don't know. I would never sue anybody. It's odds on, over a period of time, that mould, that substance affected my body, and I had a really bad one winter, 2014. There was a really bad bug going around, just a bronchial winter bug, and it stayed in me. And for 3 years, my life was my 2 or 3 things then seemed to get in, including a kidney or bladder infection, and for 3 years I was utterly buggered. And you go to the Nazi Health Service, and first thing they say, second appointment, is, you've got to have continuity so that we can get to the bottom of this. It manifested in a visible, not infection, it's the wrong word, my passages behind the nose, etc., did have visible colonization by something or other that shouldn't normally be there, but for 3 years, and my whole system just gradually, I wasn't far from dead. Now, believe me, okay, there'll be those with close friends and family, but I'd moved to an area where I didn't really have long-term relations with anybody. Nobody helps. That's Britain. Poor refugees sitting there in Sfax and places like that. For many people in Britain, nobody helps. Full stop. B. The local authority systems are so appalling, they pretend to care, but they don't. You better get resilient. And it's the books. It's having that inside of you. somehow, particularly the Russians. And Russian novels are great. Tolstoy is absolutely magnificent. And your Toms and people like that will be cynical about your Russian novels. And you hear people speaking of Russia now after Ukraine in weird ways. No, your Russian novels are just the best training to be stoical. War and Peace is a book version of a soap opera, of course it is. But Resurrection is actually better. Blah, blah, blah. Why did I turn this on? Because I am the perfect example. My health was brilliant. Loads of walking. And then maybe it was the mould in a property. That wasn't even that apparent. I mean, it was obvious the property was damp. Everything used to get damp there gradually. Except for the one room where I kept the wood burner on. Maybe that, or maybe the bug of winter 2014 was a different bug because where I lived, there were lots of factory chicken sheds that were hidden away, but maybe the antibiotic resistance had developed in bugs that were growing, that were coming out of these chicken sheds. And Herefordshire, very West Herefordshire, when I moved there 25 years ago, was absolutely beautiful. None of this industrial farming was there, and it took over as of about 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's the most industrialised industrially farmed county in Britain. Maybe the the antibiotic-resistant bacteria had mutated such that the bugs that were coming into humans, and randomly I just got a worse than normal one. Yeah, point being, you don't know. The Toms, the Camillas, and the ordinary people. You don't know when something's going to come along. I mean, for 3 years, for 2.5 years out of 3.5 years, I was on government sick pay at, what is it, £65 a week. And they continually undermine your claim with, oh, you haven't got your fit note this month when you've sent one in. I mean, I was functional to a certain extent in that I was still doing some work assisting people with their legal issues, blah, 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 blah. You don't know when it's going to come along. You don't know when it's going to hit you. The big one, the one that takes you over the edge such that you're literally crawling around on the floor. And it's the resilience through good reading, which somehow it keeps a flame inside of you going, not now, I wouldn't. I mean, the point is, if any ordinary person would look at this, they'd think, poor guy, no roof. No, the exact opposite. I'm in a much better mode, existence, the last couple of years than living in that place, which is sad. I adored living there, but no. I saw it being renovated. Actually, I popped back there a couple of months after, well, we were going to get evicted anyway, gentrification. And the builders showed me just the total lack of any damp course. They did the biggest, it was actually interesting. It's like they had to completely bitumen. This is a 250-year-old property. They had to bitumen and totally dig out the floors, the plaster, everything, because there was no damp course essentially anywhere. And you don't know. You just don't know what's gonna overtake you in life. And I thought, of course, 5 years ago, I got better summer 2018 by doing a lot more physical walking exertion, because an unusually unhappy personal thing happened, and I was particularly bleak and just didn't want to be around people. And instead of crawling 15 miles a week around the hills, I didn't have a vehicle on the road at the time, I increased it to 30 miles, just being out, go out, unhappy, walk. And my bodily, my immune system seemed to click in, supercharged by that extra walking, almost certainly. So, yes, good books, but it's like almost everybody now. It's like this must have come from just years of your shit television, your crap sport. Almost everybody is like, you read good books? I only actually read 2 or 3 good books a year now, but I did my 10 or 20 years of reading 100 good books a year. No, that's an exaggeration. 30 or 40. And that's the one thing that... when I say good book, I mean something like, that year, I think it was 2018, I read Rachel Kushner's Mars Room. And I also read For the Love of a Son by Miriam Dudar, except it's Jean Sassoon. That was just a superb book. So that's all I know in life, in your 20s particularly, reading good books develops a resilience inside of you such that when the shit happens later on, it's not like you're going to find a friend in a good book. No, not at all. It's that you have a kind of, stoicism, is that the right word? A zen stoicism such that you will pitter-patter on through the bullshit that comes along, and to the migrants, nobody cares about anything in this country. Nobody's helped me with my kid in 13 and a half years when a chap needs... I'm brilliant with kids as parents, no. But a chap needs 1 or 2... What the fuck does feminine mean? You need... Everything in life is cultural construct. You need somebody of the acceptable gender. I've gone back to using the word sex deliberately because there are only 2 sexes, full stop, and this is not this is not a J.K. Rowling video, it's just scientific. Look up Dark Horse podcast, Heather Hailing. She's categorical on this, and she's a professor of evolutionary biology, blah, blah, blah. You need somebody that fits in with the cultural construct. The cultural construct is that the female person, the female sex, will be safe. So you need that person to reassure and bridge into a young adult, obviously. And I have done this for others quite a lot. But has one person offered it to me? Well, one person did, but it was fake. Nobody helps you in Britain. Blah, blah, blah. Is that why I turned the camera on? I gotta figure out what was on those bits of paper now.